Good morning, students. We have seen till now the two major umpires of the early times. We have been looking into their strengths, their similarities, and their differences. That is the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire, which today we know as Iran. Okay, and we have also seen the languages which and the diversity of the Roman Empire. Today, the early empire. Today, sticking to this topic, we look at this very important third paragraph. The regime established by Augustus, the first emperor in 27 BC, was called the Principate. Although Augustus was the sole ruler and the only real source of authority, the fiction was kept alive that he was actually only the leading citizen, that is, the princeps and not the absolute ruler. This was done out of respect for the Senate, the body which had controlled Rome earlier in the days when it was a republic. Now, students, you all have studied in class 10, and I'm sure some of you even in class 9. What exactly is a republic? This is something which we come across a lot of times when we study French Revolution in class 9, when we study revolution in Europe in class 10. So this word republic keeps coming, and now you have political science as well. So I'm sure you would come across this term republic all the time. But what exactly is republic? I wish I could have asked you in class, but let me just in general, what republic essentially implies is that there is no king or an emperor kind of a situation, and the power is not concentrated in the hands of just one authority. The representatives of people are very important. In republic, and the institutions that represent the people of that particular land, those institutions have their own power, and they play a very important role, and those powers cannot be tampered with. So like in India, you have Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Parliament. Now, that's what makes you a republic. Now, Augustus was the sole ruler, and students, a big bit of backdrop here. I really wish we were in class and I could have shown you on the board. Now, why is Augustus important, students, and why he has been particularly mentioned here? The regime established by Augustus, the first emperor in 27 before Christ, was called the Principate. Now, studs, you all have heard of this very famous Roman emperor, Julius Caesar. Yes, you have. Now, Julius Caesar was uh, very instrumental in really tearing apart the strength and power and influence of Senate when he became not just the ruler of Rome. Unfortunately, students, he was not the ruler of Rome for a very long period of time. He ruled only from 46 BC to 44 BC, only barely 2 years before he was assassinated by his own set of friends and senators. As you all know that that's what Julius Caesar play by William Shakespeare has so beautifully um, shown it, how it had the whole conspiracy and how it had unfolded. But then, before he became the ruler of the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar was a very, very powerful general. And even when he was the general in the Roman army, he never liked the influence of and for him it was interference of the senators. And even then, he used to take measures, and he used to never liked the Senate and the institution of it, and he systematically worked against the interests of the Senate. So, and how Augustus and Julius Caesar are connected is not just that the Augustus became ruler almost 16, 17 years after Julius Caesar was killed, but the very important thing is Augustus was the adopted son of Julius Caesar. Okay, Julius Caesar wanted Augustus to become the king after him whenever he died. Okay, uh, So Augustus was the adopted son of Julius Caesar, and he barely and just merely carried on the tradition that had his father actually had been carrying on. That is, unraveling and taking off the powers of Senate, peel, peel and peel by peel. Okay, so. But he just didn't call himself an emperor. He just called himself a princeps, that is the first citizen, so, not to offend the sentiments of the senators. So that's what it is talking about. But then there is an interesting historical backdrop to it, so that's why I shared it with you. The Senate had existed in Rome for centuries, and this is now most of the Roman historians that survive in Greek and histories that survive in Greek and Latin were written by people from a senatorial background. From these, it is clear that the emperors were judged by how they behaved towards the Senate. The worst emperors were those who were hostile to the senatorial class, behaving with suspicion or brutality and violence. Many senators yearned to go back to the days of republic, but most must have realized that this was impossible. So the true republic was gone. Julius Caesar had worked against it, and then his adopted son August did the final blow. So, but what it is essentially saying is that yes, the historians were usually employed by the senators, and the Roman history has been kind to the rulers who were nice to the body of Senate, and the Roman history has not been nice to those who had very strong opinion against Senate and the senators. Okay, so next to the emperor and the Senate, and the other key institution of the imperial rule was the army. And unlike the army of its rival in the Persian Empire, which was conscripted, as we had discussed yesterday, the Romans had a paid professional army where almost, and that's what it is written by 4th century, they had 600,000 soldiers. So that is a huge number, students. Okay. Um, so, to sum up, the emperor, now coming to the second paragraph here, to sum up, the emperor, the aristocracy, and the army were the three players in the political history of the empire. The success of individual emperors depended on their control of the army, and when the armies were divided, the result usually was a civil war. And students, it is understood, it is very obvious, and it happens in all the cultures, whether it was in India or it was in China or Roman Empire or whichever empire for that matter. Uh, the army is always, and it had been always, a double-edged sword. You could have a kingdom could have a very powerful army, but then the more powerful the army is, the bigger the army is, the more elaborate its military structure is, you need more efficient and great military men to manage them, right? Because this kind of a military force would not listen to or would not obey the orders of rulers who are weak and lazy, right? They would only listen to what, if the ruler happens to be smart, very brave himself, very charismatic, great administrator, only then would these powerful militaries, generals and their soldiers, pay respect to the rulers. Otherwise, it barely takes them 6 months, 1 year. The moment they realize that the king or the emperor is weak, they just get rid of him. Okay. That is what the problem is in having very strong and huge military forces. So this exactly was the same situation uh, in the Roman army. Uh, the reason for the greatness of Rome lied to a great extent in its military machinery, because they had such efficient military machinery, and they had such great generals. That's the reason why they were able to conquer almost wherever they went, right? But then the problem was also that that kind of military force listens only to someone who happens to be extremely charismatic himself, extremely brave himself, extremely adept in administering his forces. So it's a double-edged sword. Otherwise, there are mutinies which, instead of strengthening the empire or the kingdom, it weakens the kingdom. Because if the army refuses to take orders, the state gets weakened. So, except for one notorious year, 69 after Christ, when four emperors mounted the throne in quick succession, the first 2 centuries were on the whole free from civil war and, in this sense, relatively stable. Succession to the throne uh, was based as far as possible on family descent, either natural or adoptive. As we just saw, Augustus himself was the adopted son of Julius Caesar, and even the army was strongly wedded to this principle. For example, the students, what happened? Why this 69? Except for one notorious year, 69 AD, when four emperors mounted the throne in quick succession. Students, what had happened was in 68, in the year 68 AD, uh, you have also heard of this emperor, whom I'm just about to mention, though he is more infamous rather than famous. His name is Nero, Nero, right? And we've often said that when Rome was burning, Nero was playing the flute, right? So Nero had committed suicide in the year 68 AD. Okay, though it's not there in this chapter, but just to give you a pretext for why there was one emperor after the other just in 1 year, four emperors in 1 year, okay, in quick succession, because there was a huge amount of political vacuum and chaos and turmoil in 68 AD, because the emperor himself had committed suicide, becoming the first Roman emperor to ever do so, right? And there was no succession chain at all, and everything went disarray. And that is the reason why in the year, because there was so much of struggle for the position of the emperor. Every different groups, different people with different loyalties, they all started scrambling for this. Naturally, everyone wants to be the most powerful person of the Roman Empire. So it was that's why you had four emperors in just 1 year. Now, for example, Tiberius, 14 to 37 AD, the second king in the long line of Roman emperors, was not the natural son of Augustus. Now, see, after Augustus, it is Tiberius who became the ruler, and again, Tiberius was not his own son of Augustus; he was also the adopted son of Augustus. Okay, the ruler who founded the Principate, but Augustus adopted him to ensure a smooth transition. But students, why is Tiberius important? 14 AD to 37 AD. Students, remember this. Tiberius would always remain important in history books, because when Jesus was crucified, when Jesus was at his peak of glory, the king of the Roman Empire was Tiberius, and Jesus lived on the lands which were the lands under the Romans. Okay, and Tiberius was the king of the Roman Empire, and that is why Tiberius happens to be an unforgettable name in Roman history. We always talk about him, no one ever forgets him. We shall continue. Thank you.